Shalom, shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahak Kodash, the one of the apostles and elders of great millstone who rule well. Peace, salutations, and blessings to the elect pushing the word across the four corners of earth, risking your life to do so. And the question has come up over and over again because when you see Esau, the scriptures say the spirit of Egypt shall fail. Right, his wise men are failing. All of his top leaders and rulers are failing. And it's making the whole country fail. And so what they do is they try to go back and reach back to their roots. Right? They're making all of these different pieces about Greece and Rome. They're making period pieces about, world war, all the world wars they were in. And then, of course, you got the whole MAGA thing, which has always been linked to them stating that America was found on Judeo-Christian values, which that concept has already been disproven because the Christians believe that for the majority, they believe that because the so-called Jews killed the Messiah, that the blessing of salvation doesn't go to them, but it's going to be given to another nation. And then, of course, you have the JOOs who believe that, they're already in the kingdom, which doesn't actually line up with prophecy because do they even believe in prophecy? And the spirit of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy. All right, but I wanted to touch on a couple of topics because this question keeps coming up. Was Deuteronomy central to the U.S. founding? And Esau, you're done, man. There was a time where, these Edomites would disagree behind closed doors, but, in front, they were put on the front, and just to keep everything going. Now, the scriptures say that tongue is falling back upon themselves. They're actually speaking about in-house issues. They're actually talking about what really happened. Now, of course, you had this guy, Captain Kirk. This is the inspiration for the lesson, the 700 Club. And when you look at Deuteronomy, it actually means second law based on Deuteronomy 17 and 18. Right? Because the king, the ruler of the nation, he had to actually write out the law. He was also known as the lawgiver. Right, Deuteronomy 17 and 18, and it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his power, to keep all the words of this law and these statutes to do them. That his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. Right? Copy of this law. Deuteronomy, second law. And when you look at America in prophecy, they say it was more stout. Matter of fact, let's go to it. Let's just get it. More stout. And it was lifted up. They couldn't have read Deuteronomy. Because the laws of America would be the laws of the Bible. And which you just to make a long story short, they review certain scriptures, and Esau has always used the Bible for wisdom, but they don't actually follow it. They just use it to rule over people, find good rules, had this whole Christian concept. But the thing about this place was you had freedom of religion. You have freedom to worship any God that you want to, which is completely opposite of the Bible. Right? Deuteronomy goes back over the law. Right? Yep, Daniel 7:20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which fell up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, proud things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. So this is that horn, right? Look was more stout. Let's go to stout. Great captain, chief, Raab. Right? See, that's the thing about America is it's like Trump. He's the perfect personification. You know, he's that old, proud, rich, foolish man with that foolish look on his face, trying to look smart and sound wise. Definitely lifted up. Oh yeah, here we go. Ezekiel 28, and this is speaking of Tyrus, but it's like Tyrus is likened unto America, right? Because you go to Revelation, it talks about the trade, right? We always go into that. The ships are seeing everything burning. Right? Ezekiel 28:5, by thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. So the heart of that city became lifted up. They became proud. Those Canaanites, Canaan meaning merchant, and then America follows Canaan, the ways of Canaan. It's one of the people they study. Right, this place became a trade port. That's what all the fighting was about. They were being taxed, and they were like, "Hell no, we're our own place." Right, and they separated. I want to jump back to Deuteronomy. Yeah, this place was never founded upon the book, anything of Deuteronomy. It says, and Deuteronomy 17:20, and that he turned not aside from the commandment. They would never afford the commandments. Okay, let's see what it says. Psalms 50:16, but unto the wicked the Most High saith, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Seeing thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee. And see, that's what Esau does. Anybody who would go on YouTube, you got all this stuff to watch. You got everybody with a stupid opinion, stupid pod show. You got AI, garbage slop. You got all kind of idiots on there, streaming and not doing shit. We're on there breaking down the Holy Bible. They'll weave past all of these crazy people with all this weird stuff to get at a couple of guys teaching the Bible to try to get our channel shut down for misinformation. Just like 2020, they were flagging our stuff for we couldn't say anything. Or they was any little word. They had AI detection on the videos. All right, medical misinformation, which I'm not giving any medical information out in this video. But if you would have listened to the men of the Lord, you'll be in better shape. Right? And for those out there, if you don't listen, the scriptures say, he that often hardeneth his neck shall die. When we read out of this book, it's life and death. It's that serious. All right, jumping back though, just linking up Babylon with the complete opposite of what it says in Deuteronomy. It says, back to Deuteronomy 17:20, it said, so he was never turned to the commandments. It said, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. All right, what you have, man, a certain sect of Christians, if you want to consider them part of Christians, the Mormons, they actually believe that Utah is the kingdom, is Judah. The kingdom of Judah is Utah. Then they have a bunch of weird, wacky breakdowns. All right, but in the case for this place, you're not going to prolong this kingdom. This place was made to be destroyed. Matter of fact, it said the eighth goeth into perdition. Revelation 17, and this is the beast. All right, verse 9, it talks about the 7 heads, 7 mountains. All right, verse 11, though, let's get to one of those heads, the last one to be created. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And this is the nation that's going to go into that perdition, that utter destruction, right? Being ruled by the sons of perdition. What does it say? The son of perdition is revealed. Second Thessalonians 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, right, the day of the Lord shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Right? Perdition, again, meaning utter destruction. Because this place is going to be utterly destroyed. So Deuteronomy would not apply to them at all. You guys are not, because they'll try to, that's what they'll try to explain. Well, all of the inheritance of the Bible is going to go to the spiritual Israel, which are the modern day Christians, and it's that no, the scriptures never say that. All right, it tells you 12,000 of this tribe, 12,000 of that tribe. It's about a bloodline. All right, and if you guys would have really read this book, matter of fact, in the 2nd chapter, it mentions you Edomites. All right, Deuteronomy 2. And 22, it says, as he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horims from before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead even unto this day. So you guys would have saw it mentioned your people, the Edomites, who we've already traced, and who many people have already compared Rome to, because this is Rome in a revived state. This is Rome 2.0. Right? How you guys stole this place from the northern kingdom. You would have looked in Deuteronomy and saw yourself doing the exact same thing. If you guys really read Deuteronomy. All right, that's what Esau does. They'll read through this, they'll cherry pick, they'll take stuff for a script and flip it, and then change. You guys are not the people of the book. All right, you guys are the people who actually fought against Moses and the Israelites when we came out of Egypt. That's the people that you are. When we just wanted to pass through. All right, and like I was saying before, this is a place of, you can worship any religion and any God. This is a place of strong wine when the scriptures tell you not to do that. All right, Revelation 18 and 3, for all nations have drunken. Now this is going into that same nation. It said the 8th, right? That 8th head, that 8th nation in that particular sequence. It says, for all nations have drunken of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Yeah. The whole trade thing, the communication system for trade, telephones and telecommunications. All these nations have gotten rich because they can export their products, and they can trade for U.S. dollars, a currency that's far superior to theirs. Right? And the other nations were drunk because they made all that money, right? Not off of actual wine, which they probably were drunk off wine, but It's talking about doctrine, philosophies, right? Like brothers always talk about during that 2007-8 period where Obama got into office and he was pushing for all these nations to accept open homosexuality. He changed the don't ask, don't tell in the military, if I'm not mistaken. Right? During the Obama era, that's probably like the last you saw on television of the nuclear so-called white family. You know, before that it was Dawson's Creek, Seventh Heaven. After that, it was over with for them. It was two men, two women, a dog, just a bunch of. It got weird. And these other nations have gotten weird too because they've accepted all these different feminism and single mothers and just open debauchery. Right? And this is that place that it was set up for us to be taken to and then delivered out of. Deuteronomy 28, scripture we always go to. You should be in Egypt. Come on, man. Maybe they were inspired by Deuteronomy 28 to enslave and bring Jake over here. That's probably the part where you guys were inspired. Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. They're like, oh, Egypt. So we get to bring them over here. That's the part you guys had. I see, and that's what you notice with Amalek. A lot of people open this book and they'll just try to use the wisdom of it. They'll just read Psalms and Proverbs, and then that's it. But if you don't know how to apply that, if you don't know the spirit to apply it, if you don't know who you are, who's going to dwell in the kingdom of heaven, who's going to inherit the heathen, right, whose salvation is for, if you don't know certain key information, you can only go so far. Because a lot of these Amalekites, they are crafty, they're clever. But it's over with. Your shame is before you. It's Proverbs 26:7. That's why very soon we're not going to be on YouTube. They're already setting up the whole AI prison in the digital space. You got people complaining and shit. They're already setting everything up. Right? All of our words have been marked. They download our videos. They monitor you when you go to camp. They marked you for this word. Right, which Deuteronomy, let's see, I'm going to jump back and then we're going to close out on that one. Deuteronomy goes back to, in the Hebrew at least, Debarim. These be the words. Right, Debarim, that's the Salakia. That's the Hebrew title. These be the words. Yeah, usually the book is based on, a particular sequence of words in the first chapter, usually the first verse. Yeah, Debarim. And we're speaking these words. We are the speakers. Making these words plain. But, with truth comes haters. It is what it is. Because you guys can steal from my book, steal from our heritage, but that's what the scriptures say you're going to do anyway. So you're only falling into the plan. All right, Proverbs 26:7. And we know what happened, Deuteronomy 30, you start to get there where it say, I will reverse these curses and put them on your enemies. That's what it's looking like right now. All right, but Proverbs 26:7, the legs of the lame are not equal. So is a parable in the mouth of fools. So a fool can know all kind of scriptures and words. He's still a fool. Because you don't have you're not going to actually use that to attain salvation. You're not going to walk towards anything. Yeah, you might save some money. Yeah, you might get some good ideas or whatever. But ultimately, your house is going to be overturned. All right, verse 9. As a thorn goeth up in the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of a fool. Ah, yeah, you put your hand on a thorn. Oh, shit. You prick yourself. All right, people think you're a fool and you say something like, oh, what? All right, they're not the people of this inheritance. Which again, Deuteronomy, that's the so-called fifth book of Moses, where he addresses Israel 3 times. Has nothing to do with you Edomites. And then we went into the land of Canaan, because that's what he had to do. He had to give it before we go in there, and Jake get to acting wild and all this war and this drama. Israel was addressed. That's what you got to do. That's what we're doing now. Before we go into this war, before we go into this fight, right? The Lord is addressing us, putting us through trials, tribulations, situations, for us to balance, stress tests, and see what we're weak in, and find that and strengthen it. Right? One of the functions of this word is a man needed that list of things is iron. You need iron. You make stuff with it, weaponry and stuff. Shit, you got to lift that iron. It's heavy, it's strong. It becomes a shield, a sword. All right, we're coming up to those times where this internet is going to get cut off. A lot of people are going to be looking stupid again. And you're going to have this word with you in this walk. All right? Knowledge and wisdom will give you stability, the stability of the times. So, Lord willing, this is edifying. Shalom to the elect. Call Loyam Laya, how about Shemawashak?